From Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Mike Kinsley. On the right, Pat Buchanan. Tonight, why Sally hates Harry. In the Crossfire, in Chicago, Asa Baber, columnist for Playboy. And in Los Angeles, women's rights attorney Gloria Allred.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire. Men are sensitive, caring creatures who exist only to make women happy. And we thought everybody knew that, didn't we, Pat? But a shocking poll released yesterday reveals that American women increasingly see men as lazy, lecherous egomaniacs. 20 years ago, 2/3 of all women thought that men were basically kind, gentle, and thoughtful. Today, barely half think so.
Do you think men are kind, gentle, and thoughtful? No.
A scientific sampling. 42% think men are basically self-centered, up 10 percentage points from 1970. 54% think that the first thing a man thinks about a woman is going to bed with her. Only 41% thought so 20 years ago. Where do they get this idea?
Then you start fascinating what it would be like to go to bed with her. Yeah, I do that.
There you go. Men of America, why are we so misunderstood? Or are the women maybe onto something? And Pat, don't let me catch you using that word girls. Over half find that offensive, up from barely a third in 1970.
Okay, Gloria, what is the problem? Why are the girls and the women so unhappy 20 years after the feminist revolution?
I think it's because we have expectations that we are going to be treated equally, that we are going to be treated fairly on the job, at home, in each and every aspect of American life. But unfortunately, those expectations have not been met. We have been sorely disappointed. Most women are working at low-paid, sex-segregated job ghettos, not earning what they deserve to earn, and they are disappointed.
But Gloria, you're marching off into the Feminist Manifesto. We're talking here about personal relationships. Now, it seems that American women, or many of them, wanted to be able, if you will, to run around and to play around just like the boys did. And now they find that they're not very happy and they're not treated as ladies anymore. Aren't you really, in that sense, in the personal relations, in sort of a war against human nature? You want what you can't really have.
No, I think we're in a war against ignorance. We're in a war against a tyranny in marriage. Rather than having a partnership in marriage, sometimes we just have a one-sided relationship where women are indicating in that poll that they feel that they are being taken advantage of because they are having to assume an unequal share, a disproportionate share of the homemaking responsibilities. Majority of American women are working outside of the home. They come home at night, then they have to work inside the home, and men aren't doing their fair share at home. And this is causing a great deal of frustration and anger and disappointment among women.
But you know, Gloria, it's rare. It is really rare that we've had a feminist on here, on this show, and we've had many, many over the years, who seems to be a genuinely happy person. Why is that?
Well, you know, it isn't easy to be happy.
There's rage, there's frustration, there's anger, and rop. Yeah.
Pat, that's really unfair. Happy people don't make good Crossfire guests. We have enraged, unhappy people. That's what we specialize in here, of both sexes.
But all the feminist leaders, you know.
Well, Pat, it's easy for you to be happy. You're the one in power. But for a woman to be happy, if she has been raped, as 1 in 3 women in many counties are going to be in their lifetime, for a woman to be happy when she has been raped, or if she's been battered by her husband, or if she can't collect her child support, or if she's been discriminated against on account of her sex on the job, you think that she's supposed to have a happy, smiling face after that? I say that's wrong. Let her show that she is angry and wants change.
Okay, let's get Mr. Baber in here. You know, I've read some of your columns in Playboy, and you don't strike me as a terribly happy, relaxed sort of person yourself.
Oh, I'm easy. I'm easy.
Now, look, I don't think, and I'm sure you don't think either, that men have become any worse in the past 20 years to explain the difference in this poll. But surely what has happened is that women have woken up over the past 20 years. 20 years ago, the feminist movement was a fringe group. Now, even women who don't think of themselves as feminists, even think of themselves as anti-feminists, have had their consciousnesses raised and know how they ought to be treated and realize they're not being treated that way. How's that?
Well, that goes right along with your guest's theory. I think that the first thing you got to say is the feminist revolution was a necessary revolution, and now we are into the excesses of the revolution. I don't think there's anything new or shocking in this study. As guys, we've been hearing this for 25 years. We've had a quarter century of being told that we're the oppressors, we're the tyrants, and we're the bad guys, and it really gets boring, and it's really wrong.
You know, Pat was talking about the kind of thing guests we get often on Crossfire, and you also fit into a typical category, which is the guy on the conservative side who comes in and says, you know, what was happening in the past was really a good thing. Happened just last night with animal rights.
I didn't say that.
The feminist revolution was necessary. Now it's gone too far. Well, if it was up to people like you, and even frankly people like me, people like Pat, there wouldn't have been a feminist revolution in the first place. What makes you think that that was all great and now it's gone too far?
First of all, thank you for speaking for me. Okay.
Well, go ahead and speak for yourself. I'm sorry.
Thank you. If it had been up to me, there would have been a feminist revolution, and I do believe in equal rights, and I do think most men, a large majority of men, believe in equal rights for ourselves as well as women. There are many ways in which we do not have equal rights. But the point is, the revolution happened, and now we are getting battered. We are literally getting battered, misunderstood, and we are prejudiced against. It's not easy, it's not fun, but we're used to it.
All right, Gloria, let's go to this, use this term battered, and let's get to an issue that you raised, and where I agree with you, there's no doubt about it. I think that at least in terms of manifestations, there's an awful lot more abuse of women, battered women, and there certainly appears to be a lot more rape, and when you read about date rape and things on campuses, which existed but almost unheard of, how do you account for this fact that this phenomenon is going on much more prominently in the 80s than it did, for example, in the 50s?
I think that there is a great increase in violence against women, and that is a sign that we are sending messages to a lot of men in this country that they have permission to beat up on women physically, emotionally, verbally. They can do so, and they can do so at very little cost to themselves, because the sentences for rapists are not very stiff. Often they won't be caught, and they think that they can get away with it, and often they can. I think we need to have more men espousing principles of equality, espousing the idea that women are entitled to their fair share of the American pie. They are entitled to live and walk down the street and be safe walking down there and not be assaulted. We want you to take our side and not sit back and say, oh, we're bored with all of this. It's nice that you say this, but stop beating up on us. Take our side.
Mr. Baber, I think what Pat is trying to imply is that the women's movement is somehow responsible for the increase in rape and violence against women, if in fact there has been some, because it has destroyed chivalry. Is that a fair summary?
Well, no, I think there's no question about it. Women are mistreated, and I would like to know why.
Well, let me try the theory that Pat is afraid to admit that that's what he's pushing, which is that chivalry is dead thanks to the women's movement. As a result, men are treating women worse than they were before feminism was invented. Now, do you agree with that?
Let me say that this has quickly deteriorated into a very heavy discussion about rape, date rape, and so forth, and I'll participate in that, but we did come in here to talk about the Roper Report, which really isn't into that kind of subject. Just very quickly, I'd like to say that most men, a large majority, 99% of men, are not in favor of rape. They are not in favor of murder and violence and all these other things. So I would hate to be put in the position of saying rape is okay. I'm not. It is a fact that men are ignored and misunderstood today. Let's take one quick example. Walk into any bookstore and you will find a huge section on women's studies and women's issues. You'll find no such thing in terms of men's issues. Walk onto any college campus and you will find women's studies programs. You will find very few men's studies programs. We are being ignored today.
Excuse me, what's the circulation of Playboy magazine? I would say that's sort of a men's book and roughly equivalent to some of these women's magazines, isn't it?
It's doing very well, yes.
Thank you. So there hasn't been any lack of men's reading material for any men who might wish it. Is there really?
Well, let's not forget that just a few years ago, the Mies Commission had the magazine taken off the shelves of a lot of stores. The magazine has not exactly had free entry into all markets. That's a fact.
Michael?
When we come back, was it that cosmopolitan girl rather than the American male who is the real enemy of feminism?
We are the spark in the engine, the switch in the night, a voice in the dark from a million miles away. We are the beat.
There's only one thing I used to hate worse than having to wash out my pantyhose every night. And that was having to throw them out.
No nonsense. The pantyhose that last.
Switch to oat bran? No way. Post bran flakes gives me 2/3 more fiber than the leading oat bran flake, and that keeps the brass in this horn.
Post natural bran flakes, keeping you at your best.
2/3 more fiber.
Sonoma, California is wine country. The vineyards here have made the valley famous. Yet today, something more remarkable than winemaking is happening in Sonoma. Businesses here are taking part in a progressive recycling program run by a company called Waste Management. Through their efforts, they'll conserve energy, natural resources, and scarce landfill space. Which means that for the Sonoma Valley, this will be a very good year indeed.
Tonight, it says super unleaded on the pump, but could it be regular lead-free? Are some gas stations selling low-octane gas at high-octane prices? On CNN's Prime News, 8 Eastern tonight.
Welcome back. We're discussing a new Roper poll which suggests that American women, 20 years into the feminist movement, are even unhappier with American men. Among the complaints, more women say that men see them first and last as objects of lust. Our guest, fittingly, is Asa Baber, who's a columnist for the Men column in Playboy magazine. He's out in Chicago, Mr. Baber is. And Gloria Allred in Los Angeles, women's rights attorney, who has been many times a guest on Crossfire. I have here, Gloria, smile now. This is Cosmopolitan magazine. It's the girl is 25, that Cosmopolitan girl. It's got Madonna on the front. And inside, there's all these articles in there, and I guess we forgot to put the thing in the index, but they're all about how to be beautiful and attractive and alluring and how to conduct your affair and things like that. If women are being viewed as, you know, if you will, objects of men's lust, etc., isn't it because in many ways that's what they want to be? I've got this New Woman magazine, all these other magazines which tell women, portray yourself that way, you can have a great affair, and then when women are treated that way, they complain. Again, don't we get to a contradiction here?
No, not really, Pat, because of course we know that men want to be attractive to women as well as women wanting to be attractive to men. Unfortunately, however, for many women, the only way that they are going to have any chance of economic mobility, of moving up on that economic ladder, is if they marry a man who can help them to move up, to do well, to move to the suburbs, to be able to afford a college education for their children.
Gloria,
they're not going to be able to do it on their own because of sex
ladies,
discrimination.
These ladies aren't talking economic ladder in these things. They're talking all kinds of things, some of which I can't even report on Crossfire because we would cross over into Geraldo territory.
Well,
and they're not interested in all this, excuse me, all this feminist stuff that we keep getting, you know, about equal rights and 71% of pay and all those sort of things.
Well, it may be a shock to your ego, Pat, but they are interested in a feminist philosophy. And as a matter of fact, the majority of American women in every poll indicate that they do support the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, but Ms.
They
Magazine,
do support every concept
Ms.
of the women's movement. They think it's a good
down,
thing.
Ms. Magazine, which is the big feminist magazine, is becoming a newsletter or something like that, and this thing is just jammed with ads, and it talks about.
I wonder, could I break in here?
Sure, go ahead.
Ms. is coming back.
Go ahead,
I wonder if we could.
Let Asa get in here. Go ahead.
I wonder if we could bring Gloria into the 1990s in terms of this business of women's status in this society. I'm not suggesting that pay is equal yet in every profession. There are some professions in which women make more than men, on average in the media and so forth. But let's just take this business of the woman having to move to the suburbs and get married to be able to live in this society. There are many women MBAs now. There are more women getting jobs. I mean, something good is happening out there, isn't it?
Well, Asa, let me just respond that it's unfortunate but true that the typical woman with a college education in our nation is only going to earn in her lifetime as much as a man with an 8th grade education could earn.
Well,
and there's a reason for that. It's called sex discrimination. Look, you can point to individual exceptions to that, but that is the general rule, and those
Gloria,
are the statistics.
Let me there's a term I coined in one of my columns called femstats, feminist statistics, and I've heard a lot of them over the last 25 years, and I find that one really hard to believe.
Well, then just call the U.S. Census Bureau and you'll find out what the statistics are. There
I'd be glad to argue with the Census Bureau. I'd be glad to argue with the Census Bureau.
Mr. Baber, you don't actually believe that we've achieved this golden age of equal opportunity and equal pay for women, do you?
No, I do not.
So why do you say the feminist revolution has gone too far when it hasn't achieved a result that even you say is a key fair element for our society?
Speaking in terms of the way men are treated in this culture, by the media, by the bookstores, by television, it seems to me that we are bashed consistently and that our case is not being made. There's no voice for the American male out there. We've had over the last 25 years many spokespeople for feminism. Do you have anybody who really represents nationwide a masculinist philosophy and can talk about men's rights?
Excuse me, that's Pat Buchanan.
Yeah, Mr. Baber, it's a
really.
Yeah, he's our standard bearer here.
Well, he's my hero. He's my hero.
Look, Mr. Baber, your point about bookstores, which you keep making, strikes me as very silly. Bookstores are capitalism incarnate. If women's books are selling, it's because women are going in there and buying them. If you've written a book and taking this manist point of view, or whatever you call it, masculinist point of view, and no one's buying it, that's not women's fault. That's men's fault, arguably, or it's arguably your fault.
What you have, I realize that we've got to speak very carefully about capitalism around Pat Buchanan, but the fact remains that in this marketplace, you have a self-fulfilling prophecy. Billions of dollars have been made on the feminist revolution. I hope you remember that.
Gloria, that's a good point. Let me follow up on that. It is true. You go into the bookstores, all these women's books, again, in the magazine articles, and women say they're concerned about men's self-indulgence and selfishness. I mean, isn't this what all these magazines and books are selling? Me, me, me?
No, as a matter of fact, the feminist philosophy is not a me philosophy. It's about helping a whole group of people, the majority of our nation, achieve equality and fairness. And I think that it's right and it's fair that we finally learn about our own herstory, not just the history, his story, but her story. Yes, her story, our story of the contributions that women have made to this country. And yes, how we can achieve even more change for our daughters. He has this crybaby approach, Asa does, about, oh, poor men being bashed. We're not bashing men, but look, you folks are the ones in power. 95% of the United States Congress are male. Only 5% are female. We have to change that so women are able to participate in the political process and also economically, socially, and in every way, in every aspect of American life.
Nobody's arguing. Go ahead.
Okay, excuse me. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll give Asa a chance to respond to the charge that he's a crybaby, and we'll also ask whether Barbara Bush is a suitable role model for today's women college graduates.
People helping people. At GE, it's part of everything we do, so that every product and service we provide is the best it can be to help you reach your dreams.
GE, glad we can help. We bring, we're always there for you.
It's just about vacation time again, and that means Texas, where there's so much to see and do, it's like visiting a whole other country. Just call 1-800-8888-TEX for your free Texas travel book. 248 pages of where to go and what to do in Texas. You like beaches? You can sun on over 600 miles of Texas beaches. Or how about mountains? You can climb mountains. Or just sit back and enjoy a plate of barbecued ribs, Gulf seafood, Tex-Mex, and more. It all starts when you call 1-800-8888-TEX. You like boating, fishing, windsurfing? Well, Texas has over 5,000 square miles of water. Plus, the people are friendly. The cities are exciting, and there are bargains galore. Not to mention Cowboys, the Alamo, and NASA, too. Call for your free Texas travel book now and see for yourself.
That's a great book.
Texas, it's like a whole other country.
Jane Laporte has a big job. She's in charge of recycling for the Waste Management Company, and she has some strong feelings on the subject. She recycles at home. She recycles at work. She buys things made of recycled material. Now, since she works managing the day-to-day operations of the world's largest recycling organization, you might think Jane feels this way because of the job she has. But actually, she has the job because of the way she feels.
Mr. Baber of Playboy, I think we need your views on a controversy up at Wellesley College going on these days. Some of the students are very upset that the graduation speaker this year is Barbara Bush. They say, look, she's a wonderful woman. They have no problems with her in that score, but she's not exactly a good role model for what is possible to be achieved by a woman college graduate today. Now, what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's a perfect example of the excesses of feminism. I think it shows the way in which feminism has gotten rigid and is basically a party line kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, Gloria, let me ask you. It seems to me that up at Wellesley, the majority of women voted to have Mrs. Bush up there, and this is a minority of about 150 students who are griping, as you know. But isn't Mrs. Bush really, in a way, an ideal for an awful lot of American women? 90% of that Roper poll, for example, of those women saw as the primary goal in their lives that they wanted to have happy marriages. It seemed to me that she's done a tremendous job, hasn't she?
Actually, you don't know the truth of whether she's been happy or not. You only know what she tells you, which of course is often very different than what has really gone on in women's lives. Last year, Gloria Steinem and I stood in front of the White House when we had this huge march on Washington, and we both shouted at the White House, "Free Barbara Bush, free Barbara Bush," because we think that Barbara Bush should be entitled to speak the truth and give her own opinions, and her opinions should be valued as much as the president's are. But unfortunately, obviously, she's been told to zip it up, be quiet about many of her own personal opinions, which conflict with the president's. And that's the problem. Women should be able to express their opinions. They should be considered to be as important as men's opinions.
Okay, excuse me. We got one more poll question I want to get Mr. Baber's reaction to. 1970, 43% of American women objected to nude women's pictures in men's magazines like your own. That's up to 61% in 1990. How do you explain that?
I was thrilled with that result because I know it proves that women are not lecherous, they have no lust, they don't go look at Mel Gibson's rear end in the movies, and it's great to know that they're better than us.
All right, Gloria, quick reaction.
Well, I do think that women are concerned and men are looking at the nude pictures all the time, and it does translate over to sexual harassment in the workplace, and it does translate over to thinking of us as dumb women and only valuable for our bodies. We need to have women valued for their achievement.
Okay, excuse me, we're out of time. No one's ever accused you of being dumb. Thanks a lot, Gloria Allred. Thank you, Asa Baber, and Pat Buchanan and I will be back shortly.
Hello, I'm Susan Rook. Coming up next on CNN's Prime News, a report that may make you think twice before you brush your teeth or gulp down that glass of tap water. Also, wind, rain, snow, or bad weather won't stop the legal system. A California mailman is sentenced to jail for killing a family dog. And don't adjust your television sets. Barbie goes to boot camp. All on Prime News next.
Late one night in 1953, in a darkened GE laboratory, a remarkable breakthrough occurred. An experiment in liquid polymers took an unexpected turn. Dan Fox, the young scientist who found it the next morning, had no idea what he'd created. But it was crystal clear and incredibly strong, even under the most extreme conditions. It was Lexan, the first of GE's engineered plastics. Plastics that would soon make it possible for architects to express themselves more brilliantly. It would make a car designer's best ideas even better and help doctors in their life-saving work. Because what Dan Fox had discovered was something we at GE have always believed. You never know where the next great idea will come from or how far it will take you.
Call now and you can have 13 weeks of the Wall Street Journal and this valuable 120-page guide to understanding money and markets. That's 13 weeks of the Journal for the news and ideas you need every business day. And this guide free, which tells you everything you want to know about money and markets, now for only $34. Call toll-free 800-638-9600. Today's Wall Street Journal. Faster, tougher, smarter. Call 800-638-9600 now.
Guess who's watching Baseball 90?
I'll be watching Baseball 90.
Oh, yeah. Watch it.
Wouldn't miss it for anything.
Baseball 90, Saturday, 11:30 a.m. on CNN.
Well, Michael, they got what they wanted, and now they're frustrated more than ever.
That's really unfair, Pat. Were you honestly suggesting, and you can tell me truthfully now that the show is over, that feminism is responsible for an increase in violence against women?
In part, it's made a contribution to it. Certainly, this type of stuff has made a contribution to it.
That's not feminism. You were attacking, you were using that to bash her with, and now you're accusing her of it.
The idea of feminism that, you know, we're just like the boys, we can sleep around just like them, that's why a lot of men start to think of them as objects of lust, because they make themselves that. Don't you agree with that?
I think that women were thought of as objects of lust before feminism, strangely enough. From the left, I'm Mike Kinsley. Good night for Crossfire.
From the right, Pat Buchanan. Join us tomorrow night for another edition of Crossfire. Well, there's no question about that. CNN would be better than some other shows. But basically, I think it was, and I've just lost my point here. I think the, I think the use of animals for the benefit of humans is fine. But I think PETA, my point is this: PETA is going to do some good work, and not in the sense it's going to stop this research, but if it does cause people to treat animals a little more humanely, and they do see some of these films, they ought to show how some of these animals are treated, because I do believe in the humane treatment of animals.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. I can agree with you about something. I think it takes a leap of faith to say, if you believe, if you're religious, you believe humans have souls, it's very easy to say why human beings have superior rights. If you don't make that leap of faith, and it's simply a matter of logic, it's very, very hard to say why animals have no rights and humans do.
No, I don't think animals have any rights. I do think we have obligations to treat them that way. Obviously, animals don't demonstrate any rights toward one another, do they?
No, we're better than animals.
We have obligations.
That's why we should treat them better.
It's obligations.
From the left, I'm Mike Kinsley. Good night for Crossfire.
From the right, Pat Buchanan. Join us tomorrow night for another edition of Crossfire.
For a transcript, send $3 to Crossfire Transcripts, Journal Graphics, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007, or call